The Bajoran invasion fleet materialized in Earth's orbit, their sleek warships a stark contrast to humanity's primitive satellites. Commander Voller, leader of the alien armada, initiated a global broadcast that interrupted every television, radio, and digital device on the planet. His message was clear: Earth would be conquered, and resistance was futile. Patrick Freeman, a 35-year-old former Marine-turned-animal shelter manager in Seattle, watched the alien commander's face fill his office computer screen. Voller's smug confidence was evident as he explained how the Bajorans had monitored Earth for years, concluding that humans were a weak, non-threat species due to their inexplicable affection for useless companion animals. As the broadcast ended, reports flooded in of Bajoran troops landing in major cities worldwide. Patrick's military instincts kicked in. He quickly gathered his shelter staff, issuing rapid-fire instructions to secure the animals and prepare for a potential confrontation. The diverse array of rescued creatures, from loyal dogs to nimble cats and even exotic pets, suddenly seemed like an unlikely arsenal. Outside, the first Bajoran soldiers approached the shelter. Their advanced weaponry and protective suits gleamed in the afternoon sun, a testament to their technological superiority. They moved with practiced precision, clearly expecting minimal resistance from the primitive humans and their domesticated playthings. Patrick positioned himself near the entrance, heart pounding as he watched the aliens draw closer. He glanced back at the kennels, where his trained search and rescue dogs waited silently, muscles tense and ready. In the cattery, lithe felines stalked silently, their eyes fixed on the approaching threat. The moment the Bajoran troops breached the shelter's threshold, chaos erupted. A pack of large dogs, led by a powerful German shepherd, launched a coordinated ambush. Their powerful jaws and pack tactics caught the aliens off guard, latching onto unfamiliar limbs and appendages with devastating effect. Simultaneously, a group of shelter cats sprang into action. Their agility and stealth proved surprisingly effective as they clawed at the Bajoran suits and exposed skin, causing confusion and panic among the invaders. Seizing the opportunity, Patrick rallied his staff and led a counterattack. His marine training kicked in as he coordinated the movements of both humans and animals. The combined assault overwhelmed the surprised Bajoran soldiers, and within minutes, several aliens lay subdued on the floor. Acting quickly, Patrick secured the aliens' weapons and communication devices. He used the unfamiliar technology to contact other local resistance groups, sharing vital information about the effectiveness of Earth's animals against the invaders. As news of the successful defense spread, similar tactics were adopted in other cities. The invasion's momentum began to falter as reports of unexpected resistance flooded in from around the globe. Aboard his orbiting command ship, Commander Voller received the first reports of the invasion's setbacks. His mandibles clicked in frustration as he learned of the bizarre involvement of Earth's domesticated animals in thwarting his carefully planned assault. The Bajoran leaders' initial underestimation of humanity's bond with their pets was quickly becoming apparent as a critical flaw in their strategy. As the first day of the invasion drew to a close, Patrick surveyed the shelter. The successful defense had boosted morale, but he knew this was only the beginning. His mind raced with possibilities as he considered the diverse array of animals under his care, including some exotic and potentially dangerous species. A plan began to form, a daring offensive against the Bajoran forces in Seattle, utilizing the unique abilities of Earth's fauna. As night fell, Patrick began preparations, knowing that the fate of humanity might rest on the unlikely alliance between humans and their so-called harmless pets. As the sun rose over Seattle, Patrick Freeman's phone buzzed incessantly with messages and calls from across the city. The news of their successful defense against the Bajoran troops had spread like wildfire, igniting hope in a population that had been on the brink of despair just hours earlier. Patrick rubbed his tired eyes and surveyed the shelter's main office, now transformed into an impromptu war room. Maps of Seattle covered the walls, marked with potential Bajoran strongholds and animal resource locations. His staff, a mix of shelter workers and local volunteers, huddled around computers and radios, coordinating with other resistance cells forming throughout the city. Patrick, we've got another group of volunteers from the Woodland Park Zoo, called out Sarah, his assistant manager. They're bringing some of their trained animals. What should I tell them? Patrick considered for a moment. Direct them to the loading bay. We'll need to assess which animals can be most effective in combat situations. As Sarah relayed the instructions, Patrick's attention was drawn to a commotion outside. He stepped out to find a group of people unloading crates from a van. Inside, he could hear the distinct chirps and caws of various birds. A woman in a falconry glove approached him, a majestic bald eagle perched on her arm. Mr. Freeman, I'm Lisa Chen from the Raptor Center. We heard about what you did here and thought our birds might be able to help. Patrick's eyes widened as he took in the eagle's powerful beak and talons. Miss Chen, I think you might be onto something. Come inside. Let's talk strategy. Over the next few hours, the shelter became a hive of activity. Volunteers poured in, bringing with them a menagerie of animals from across Seattle. Patrick coordinated with other shelters, zoos, and even private pet owners to gather a diverse array of creatures for their unconventional army. As they worked, reports came in of Bajoran forces regrouping. Patrick gathered his team around a large table, spreading out a map of the city. They're adapting, he explained, pointing to key locations. Our initial success caught them off guard, but they won't make the same mistake twice. We need to be prepared for anything. No sooner had he spoken than a piercing sound filled the air. Several dogs in the shelter began howling in distress, while cats flattened their ears and hissed. What is that? Someone shouted over the noise. Dr. Emily Carter, a xenobiologist who had joined their team that morning, rushed to a computer. It's some kind of sonic weapon, she explained, analyzing the readings. The Bajorans are trying to disorient our animals. Patrick watched as the dogs and cats, after their initial shock, began to calm down. Some even seemed to be tracking something invisible in the air. They can hear it better than we can, he realized. This could be an advantage. Dr. Carter, can you isolate those frequencies? Emily nodded, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Already on it. If we can predict when and where they'll use these weapons, we can turn it against them. As Emily worked, Patrick turned his attention to the diverse group of animals now at their disposal. He watched as Lisa Chen and her team demonstrated the diving capabilities of their birds of prey, while nearby, a group of herpetologists discussed the potential of using snakes for covert operations. We need to think outside the box, Patrick addressed the group. Every animal has unique abilities that could be valuable in combat. Let's start brainstorming. Over the next few days, Seattle became a testing ground for innovative animal warfare tactics. Eagles and hawks were trained to dive bomb Bajoran patrols, causing chaos and confusion. Snakes and small rodents, guided by tiny cameras, infiltrated alien encampments to sabotage equipment and communication lines. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A captured Bajoran scout brought in for questioning had a violent allergic reaction when a shelter cat wandered too close. Dr. Carter's analysis confirmed a severe Bajoran allergy to a protein in cat saliva. This changes everything, Patrick declared, immediately reaching out to resistance groups worldwide. We need to mobilize every cat we can find. They're not just pets anymore, they're our secret weapon. As word spread, the tide of the invasion began to turn. Bajoran forces, once confident in their superiority, now found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't have imagined in their worst nightmares. Commander Voller, watching from his orbiting ship, seethed with frustration. The invasion that was supposed to be a simple subjugation had turned into a humiliating quagmire. He knew he had to act decisively, or risk losing everything. Prepare for a full-scale assault on Seattle, he ordered his lieutenants. I will lead the attack myself. We will crush this resistance and show these primitives the true might of the Bajoran Empire. As Bajoran ships descended from the sky, Patrick stood atop the shelter's roof, watching the approaching storm. He turned to Sarah, dedication etched on his face. Alert all teams. It's time to put our plans into action. And get me the mayor's office. We need to start evacuations immediately. Across Seattle, humans and animals prepared for the fight of their lives. At the waterfront, trainers readied seals and dolphins for aquatic operations. In parks and backyards, everyday pets transformed into soldiers, and in the skies above, birds of prey circled, ready to strike. The battle for Seattle was about to begin, and with it, perhaps the fate of the entire planet. The ground trembled beneath Patrick's feet as he stood on the shelter's roof, his eyes fixed on the horizon. In the distance, massive silhouettes loomed against the Seattle skyline, their metallic forms catching the fading sunlight. The Bajoran battle mechs had arrived. "Sarah, get me a visual," Patrick called into his radio. Within moments, a drone feed appeared on his tablet, revealing the true scale of the threat. The mechs towered 30 feet high, their articulated limbs crushing cars and toppling trees with each thunderous step. Patrick's mind raced. Their current tactics would be useless against these behemoths. He needed a new strategy, and fast. "Dr. Carter, what's our status on those frequency disruptors?" he asked, his voice tense. "Not good, Corey," came the reply. "The mechs are using a different communication system. Our current tech is useless against them." Patrick's heart made. He watched as the mechs advanced, their heavy footfalls sending tremors through the city. Suddenly an idea struck him. "Get me the Woodland Park Zoo and every construction company in the area," he ordered. "I have a plan." Within hours, a bizarre convoy rolled through the streets of Seattle. Bulldozers and excavators, their cabs filled with resistance fighters and animal handlers, moved into position. Atop each machine, makeshift platforms had been hastily welded, carrying an assortment of animals ranging from big cats to primates. At the head of this unconventional army, riding on the shovel of a massive front loader, stood Patrick. Beside him, secured with harnesses and protective gear, were 2 adult African elephants from the zoo. "Remember," Patrick shouted to the crews, "aim for the legs, they're top-heavy. If we can knock them off balance, we stand a chance." As they rounded a corner, the first mech came into view. Its metal hide gleamed as it swiveled to face the approaching threat, weapon systems whirring to life. "Now," Patrick yelled. The front loader surged forward, building up speed. The elephants, sensing the impending collision, trumpeted in unison. With a thunderous crash, the shovel slammed into the mech's leg, the elephant's combined weight adding to the impact. The giant machine staggered, its gyros struggling to maintain balance. Seizing the moment, Patrick signaled the other teams. A crane swung into action, its wrecking ball smashing into the mech's opposite leg. From atop nearby buildings, resistance fighters launched grappling hooks, their lines entangling the mech's limbs. With a groaning of metal and a shower of sparks, the colossal war machine toppled. The ground shook as it crashed into a nearby office building, its systems sputtering and dying. A cheer went up from the resistance fighters, but Patrick knew this was just the beginning. More mechs were advancing, their heavy footsteps echoing through the city. Back at the shelter, Dr. Emily Carter worked feverishly in her makeshift lab. Surrounded by vials and computer screens, she analyzed data from captured Bajoran technology and biological samples. "This can't be right," she muttered, running the tests again, but the results were clear. The Bajorans had a severe physiological reaction to certain pheromones, particularly those produced by large predators. Emily grabbed her radio. "Patrick, I've got something. The Bajorans are highly sensitive to big cat pheromones. It could incapacitate them completely." Patrick's mind raced with the implications. "Get me every zoo in the country," he ordered his communications team. "We need every big cat they can spare." As Emily's discovery spread, the nature of the battle shifted. Tigers, lions, and other large felines were deployed strategically around the city. Their presence alone was enough to throw Bajoran ground forces into disarray, their alien biology betraying them in the face of Earth's apex predators. Patrick, however, knew they needed more than just big cats to turn the tide. In a stroke of inspiration, he reached out to Seattle's network of pigeon fanciers and falconers. Soon, the skies above the city were filled with swarms of birds. Pigeons fitted with small, improvised explosive devices dive-bombed the mech's optical sensors. Hawks and falcons, trained to recognize the Bajoran insignia, harassed pilots and ground crews with precision attacks. Meanwhile, at the waterfront, another plan was unfolding. Marine biologists and trainers from the Seattle Aquarium had mobilized a pod of orcas. These intelligent cetaceans, guided by underwater drones, targeted Bajoran ships in Puget Sound. The aliens, unprepared for an aquatic assault, found their naval superiority quickly eroding. As reports of Seattle's continued resistance spread globally, other cities began to adopt similar tactics. Zoos transformed into military bases, with animals being trained for various combat roles. In the savannas of Africa, park rangers led charges of elephants and rhinos against Bajoran ground forces. The Australian outback became a nightmare for alien patrols, with kangaroos executing lightning-fast hit-and-run attacks and venomous creatures infiltrating bases. Aboard his orbiting command ship, Commander Voller received the reports with increasing rage. The invasion that was supposed to be a simple subjugation had turned into a humiliating defeat. His mandibles clicked in agitation as he made a decision. "Prepare my personal guard," he snarled to his lieutenants. "We will end this ourselves." Back in Seattle, Patrick received word of Voller's impending attack on the shelter. He knew this would be their most critical battle yet. "Set up a multi-layered defense," he instructed his team. "Large predators and trained dogs on the outer perimeter. Inside, I want smaller animals. Rats, ferrets, anything that can sabotage their equipment." As Voller's forces approached, Patrick took his position on the shelter's roof. Around him, a flock of trained raptors perched, ready for his command. Below, a cacophony of growls, barks, and screeches filled the air as animals and humans alike prepared for the coming storm. Patrick's grip tightened on his binoculars as he spotted the first wave of Bajoran troops. They moved with caution, their new protective suits gleaming in the twilight. But Patrick noticed something off about their movement, a hesitancy that hadn't been there before. "They're scared," he realized aloud. For the first time since they arrived, they're actually scared. As the aliens drew closer, Patrick raised his hand, ready to signal the start of their defense. The fate of Seattle, perhaps the entire planet, would be decided in the next few moments. The battle for Earth was about to reach its climax. Climactic moment. The air crackled with tension as Patrick surveyed the approaching Bajoran forces. Commander Voller's troops moved with an eerie synchronization, their protective suits gleaming in the fading light. "They're here," Patrick said into his radio. "Activate the outer perimeter." At his command, a chorus of growls, roars, and barks erupted from the shelter's surroundings. The large predators and trained dogs burst into action, charging at the alien invaders with ferocious intensity. The Bajorans, caught off guard by the sheer variety and ferocity of Earth's fauna, stumbled in their advance. Patrick watched as a pack of wolves tore into the alien ranks, their teeth finding weak points in the protective suits. Lions and tigers, their massive paws swatting at the invaders, sent Bajoran soldiers flying. The aliens' weapons proved less effective than they'd hoped against the swift, unpredictable movements of the animals. But Voller was prepared. A high-pitched whine filled the air as the Bajorans activated their anti-animal countermeasures. Some of the attacking creatures recoiled, shaking their heads in confusion. Yet to Patrick's relief, the effect wasn't universal. The diverse array of Earth's animals proved too varied for a one-size-fits-all solution. "They've adapted," Sarah reported from her position. "But it's not enough. Our defenses are holding." Patrick nodded, but his relief was short-lived. In the distance, he saw Bajoran artillery units moving into position. "They're going to bombard us," he realized. "Sarah, it's time for Plan Orca." As Voller's forces began their artillery barrage, the shelter shook under the impact of alien energy weapons. Patrick sprinted down to the command center, where Dr. Emily Carter was monitoring the situation. "The orcas are in position," Carter reported, her eyes fixed on a screen showing thermal images of Puget Sound. "EMP devices are armed and ready." Patrick grabbed a radio. "Release the pod." In the waters of Puget Sound, a group of resistance fighters gave the signal. 5 massive orcas, each fitted with a specially designed harness, dove beneath the waves. They moved with incredible speed and grace toward the Bajoran ships, providing artillery support. As they approached their targets, the resistance fighters remotely activated the EMP devices. Brilliant flashes of blue-white light erupted underwater, followed by the satisfying sight of Bajoran ships losing power, their weapon systems going dark. "Direct hit," Carter exclaimed. "Their artillery is neutralized." Patrick allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before turning to his next move. "Release the swarm," he ordered. Across Seattle, apiaries that had been carefully prepared for this moment sprang into action. Millions of bees and wasps filled the air, descending upon the Bajoran ground forces like a living storm. The insects found every gap and weak point in the alien suits, their stingers penetrating where conventional weapons couldn't. The Bajoran lines dissolved into chaos. Soldiers swatted frantically at the air, their formation breaking down as they tried to escape the relentless insect assault. Taking advantage of the disorder, Patrick signaled to a team of wolf handlers who had been waiting for this moment. A pack of trained wolves, led by experienced handlers, burst from concealed positions on the aliens' flank. They tore into the disorganized Bajoran ranks, further shattering their cohesion and driving them back. In the command center, Dr. Carter's eyes widened as she studied the Bajoran communication patterns on her screen. "Patrick, look at this," she called out. "Their entire command structure is centralized. Voller is personally directing most of their operations." Patrick leaned in, his mind racing with the implications. "If we can take out Voller, we might end this battle in one stroke," Carter finished. Without hesitation, Patrick began assembling a strike team. He selected a group of highly trained military dogs and their handlers, veterans of countless operations. "We're going after Voller," he announced. "This ends today." As they moved through Seattle's war-torn streets, Patrick marveled at how quickly the city had transformed into a battlefield. The dogs' keen senses proved invaluable, alerting them to Bajoran patrols and hidden snipers. They navigated through back alleys and abandoned subway tunnels, steadily closing in on Voller's position. Bursting from a sewer grate, they found themselves in the heart of Bajoran-controlled territory. Patrick signaled for silence as they approached a fortified building that intelligence suggested was Voller's command post. Suddenly, an inhuman roar split the air. From the shadows emerged a creature unlike anything Patrick had ever seen, a monstrous hybrid of feline and reptile, its scales gleaming and claws extended. "Voller's pet," one of the handlers whispered in horror. The alien predator lunged at them with terrifying speed. The military dogs, brave as they were, recoiled from this unknown threat. Patrick watched in dismay as the creature tore through their defenses, scattering his carefully assembled team. In that moment of desperation, Patrick made a decision that would alter the course of the battle. He grabbed his radio and contacted the Seattle Zoo. "Release Kong," he ordered, hoping against hope that his gamble would pay off. Minutes that felt like hours passed as they fought to hold off the Bajoran beast. Then with a thunderous crash, a new combatant entered the fray. Kong, the zoo's senior male gorilla, beat his chest and roared a challenge at the alien predator. The two titans clashed in a battle that shook the very foundations of the city. Kong's raw strength and earthly ferocity met the alien creature's unknown abilities in a struggle of primordial intensity. Buildings crumbled around them as they fought, buying Patrick and his remaining forces the distraction they needed. Fighting their way past the last of Voller's guards, Patrick's team finally breached the command center. There, surrounded by holographic displays and alien technology, stood Commander Voller himself. The Bajoran commander turned, his alien features contorting in what Patrick assumed was surprise. For a moment neither moved, the weight of the entire invasion hanging in the balance between them. "You," Voller hissed, his voice a mixture of anger and disbelief. "How did you penetrate our defenses?" Patrick stood tall, the sounds of battle echoing around them. "You made a mistake, Voller," he said, his voice steady. You thought your technology made you invincible, but you forgot one crucial thing. Volar's hand inched toward a weapon, but Patrick's team had him covered from all angles. And what's that, human? The alien commander spat. A smile played at the corners of Patrick's mouth. This is our world, he said simply, and every living thing on it is fighting alongside us. As if to punctuate his words, a deafening roar shook the building, Kong's victory cry over the defeated alien beast. Volar's eyes widened, the full weight of his miscalculation finally sinking in. The fate of Seattle, perhaps the entire planet, now hung on the outcome of this confrontation. Patrick tensed, ready for whatever came next, knowing that the next few moments could decide the future of humanity. In that moment, Patrick saw his opening. He lunged forward, catching Volar off guard. The two collided, grappling fiercely as they crashed into a bank of alien computers. Sparks flew as equipment shattered under their combined weight. Volar's strength was immense. His armored exoskeleton gave him a significant advantage, and Patrick found himself being lifted off his feet. But years of heavy lifting at the animal shelter had honed Patrick's endurance. As Volar slammed him against a wall, Patrick absorbed the impact and countered with a swift knee to the alien's midsection. The Bajoran commander stumbled back, mandibles clicking in surprise. Patrick pressed his advantage, raining down blows on Volar's helmet. The alien's superior strength meant each hit. Patrick landed cost him, his knuckles bloodying against the hard carapace. As they fought, chaos erupted around them. A chattering sound filled the air as a group of capuchin monkeys swung into the command center through a shattered window. Trained for months in secret by the Resistance, the primates moved with purpose and precision. Two monkeys leapt onto a console, their nimble fingers dancing across alien interfaces. Bajoran communications crackled and died, cutting off Volar's forces from their leader. Others targeted data storage units, yanking out crucial components and stuffing them into small pouches strapped to their bodies. Volar roared in fury, momentarily distracted by the sight of Earth primates dismantling his command structure. Patrick seized the opportunity, sweeping the alien's legs out from under him. They went down in a tangle of limbs, trading blows on the floor. Rolling across shattered glass and sparking wires, Patrick managed to get on top of Volar. He rained down punches, each impact jarring his already battered hands. But Volar's armor absorbed much of the force, and with a surge of alien strength, he threw Patrick off. Both combatants staggered to their feet, breathing heavily. Volar's eyes darted to a small device on his wrist. Patrick's heart raced as he recognized the danger. A dead man's switch that could spell doom for Earth. "It's over, human," Volar snarled, his finger hovering over the switch. "One press, and every Bajoran ship in orbit self-destructs. Your victory here means nothing if your world burns." Patrick tensed, ready to spring, but knew he'd never cross the distance in time. Instead, he whistled, a sharp, piercing sound that cut through the chaos of battle. A dark shape streaked through the air. Ebony, a raven Patrick had raised from a chick, dived with breathtaking speed. Her talons extended, she snatched the device from Volar's wrist an instant before he could activate it. The bird banked sharply, disappearing through a broken window with her prize. Volar's momentary shock was all Patrick needed. He tackled the alien commander, using his full body weight to drive Volar to the ground. This time, when Patrick's fists connected, the alien's defenses crumbled. 1, 2, 3 solid hits, and Volar went limp. Panting, Patrick rose to his feet. He surveyed the command center, Bajoran technology sparking and dying, monkeys chittering triumphantly as they gathered intel, his human teammates securing the room. A sense of disbelief washed over him. They had done it. They had actually done it. Wasting no time, Patrick moved to a still-functioning communications array. With guidance from one of the tech-savvy Resistance members, he managed to open a channel to all Bajoran forces on Earth. "Attention, Bajoran soldiers," Patrick began, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. "This is Patrick Freeman of Earth's Resistance. Your commander, Volar, has been defeated. Your command structure is in chaos, but this doesn't have to end in more bloodshed. He paused, choosing his words carefully. We are offering you a choice. Lay down your arms and surrender. We are prepared to discuss terms for coexistence. Continue fighting and you will face the combined might of humanity and every animal on this planet. The choice is yours. As Patrick's message echoed across Bajoran communication channels, the effect was immediate and dramatic. Reports flooded in from around the globe. Bajoran units, cut off from Central Command and faced with unexpected resistance, began to surrender en masse. In the Amazon, indigenous tribes emerged from the rainforest, leading jaguars and tapirs that had harassed Bajoran patrols to the point of exhaustion. On the African savanna, Maasai warriors stood proudly alongside prides of lions, watching as alien soldiers laid down their weapons. Back in Seattle, Dr. Emily Carter burst into the command center, her eyes wide with excitement. "Patrick, you need to see this," she said, thrusting a data pad into his hands. The Capuchins retrieved crucial information about the Bajorans. Their homeworld, it's dying, severe environmental degradation. That's why they came here. Patrick's mind raced with the implications. This wasn't just an invasion, it was an act of desperation. He looked at the subdued form of Commander Voller, seeing him in a new light. "This changes everything," he murmured. As the immediate threat in Seattle subsided, Patrick's team shifted focus. They began the painstaking process of securing Bajoran technology and weapons, careful not to trigger any hidden failsafes. Veterinarians and animal handlers moved through the city, tending to the brave creatures that had turned the tide of battle. Reports continued to pour in from around the world. Each region's unique fauna had presented the Bajorans with challenges they were ill-equipped to handle. In Australia, kangaroos and emus had run circles around alien patrols, while venomous snakes and spiders made every step a potential disaster. In the Canadian Rockies, grizzly bears and mountain lions had turned Bajoran supply lines into a gauntlet of fear. Patrick's comm unit buzzed constantly as military leaders from various nations sought his advice. How had Seattle managed to coordinate such an effective animal-human partnership? Could these tactics be replicated elsewhere? Patrick began outlining a global strategy, emphasizing the need to tailor approaches to each region's specific wildlife. As night fell over Seattle, Patrick found himself atop the Space Needle, surveying the city he'd helped defend. The signs of battle were everywhere: shattered buildings, scorch marks from alien weapons, the occasional glint of Bajoran armor lying discarded in the streets. But there was hope, too. Lights flickered on across the city as people emerged from shelters. The sounds of celebration began to rise into the night air. Beside Patrick stood an unlikely honor guard. A German shepherd sat alertly at his feet, while a bald eagle perched on a nearby railing. A capuchin monkey chittered softly from his shoulder, and he could hear the low rumble of Kong somewhere in the city below. As he gazed out at the horizon, where Bajoran ships still hovered uncertainly, Patrick knew the war was just getting started. The initial victory had been won, but now came the hard part. How to secure a lasting peace. How to balance the needs of Earth with the desperate plight of the Bajoran homeworld. And perhaps most challengingly, how to navigate the complex new reality where humans and animals had forged bonds of cooperation unlike anything in history. As these questions swirled in his mind, Patrick took a deep breath of the cool night air. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain: they would face them together as one united Earth. Earth as one united front. Patrick's gaze swept across the Seattle skyline, taking in the surreal mix of destruction and hope. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but he knew this was just the beginning. His comm unit buzzed insistently. "Patrick, it's Emily. You need to get to the UN emergency session. They're waiting for you." Hours later, Patrick found himself addressing a room full of world leaders, his unlikely animal companions drawing curious glances. He outlined the tactics that had proven successful in Seattle, emphasizing the need for a coordinated global approach. "We propose the establishment of a global animal defense initiative," Patrick said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. GADI will create specialized units pairing local wildlife experts with military strategists in every region. The assembly erupted into a flurry of questions and debate. Patrick fielded each inquiry patiently, backed by Dr. Carter's data and the undeniable success of Seattle's defense. As the session drew to a close, the vote was unanimous. GADI was approved, with Patrick appointed as its director. Weeks blurred into months as GADI operations spread across the globe. Patrick found himself constantly on the move, overseeing training programs tailored to each ecosystem's unique fauna. In the Arctic, he watched as Inuit trainers worked with polar bears, teaching them to detect and disrupt Bajoran attempts to establish ice bases. The massive creatures moved with surprising stealth across the frozen landscape, their white fur providing perfect camouflage against the alien invaders. Australia presented its own challenges and opportunities. Patrick stood under the blistering sun of the outback, observing as a team of wildlife experts coordinated with military personnel to create rapid response units of kangaroos and emus. "All right, let's run the drill again," shouted Sergeant Williams, a grizzled veteran who had initially scoffed at the idea of animal warfare. Now, he watched with pride as a group of red kangaroos bounded across the terrain, easily outpacing the simulated Bajoran patrol. Emus darted between rocky outcroppings, using their speed and agility to confuse and disorient the enemy. Back in Seattle, Dr. Emily Carter made a breakthrough that would change the course of the war. Patrick entered her lab to find her surrounded by vials of colorful liquids, her hair disheveled and eyes bright with excitement. "Patrick, we've done it," she exclaimed, holding up a small canister. "We've synthesized a pheromone-based deterrent derived from Earth's apex predators. Initial tests show it's highly effective against Bajoran physiology." The implications were staggering. Within weeks, production facilities were churning out canisters of the deterrent, which were promptly distributed to resistance cells worldwide. Reports flooded in of Bajoran forces retreating in panic from areas where the pheromones had been deployed. As Earth's defenses solidified, Patrick turned his attention to the Bajoran data they had captured. Poring over the information with a team of analysts, he discovered the location of the aliens' main orbital command station. "This is it," Patrick said, pointing to a holographic display of the station. "If we can capture this, we can end the invasion once and for all." The plan was audacious, bordering on insane. Patrick assembled an elite team for a space mission unlike any in history. Capuchin monkeys, selected for their dexterity and intelligence, underwent rigorous training in zero-gravity environments. A pack of border collies, chosen for their loyalty and problem-solving abilities, learned to navigate complex spaces in spacesuits specially designed for quadrupeds. A murder of ravens, their cognitive skills rivaling those of great apes, were trained in data retrieval and sabotage. Launch day arrived with a mix of tension and anticipation. Patrick stood before his team, human and animal alike, in a hangar filled with retrofitted Bajoran shuttles. "Remember your training," he said, his voice carrying across the silent room. "Trust each other, trust yourselves. Today, we take the fight to them." As the shuttles lifted off, Patrick felt the familiar surge of adrenaline. Through the viewport, he watched Earth recede, its blue-green surface marred by the scars of invasion, but still achingly beautiful. The Bajoran command station loomed before them, a massive structure overflowing with weapons. As they approached, alarms blared and energy weapons flared to life. Patrick gritted his teeth, maneuvering the shuttle through a hail of fire. "Now!" he shouted, and the shuttle bay doors opened. Capuchin monkeys secured by tethers leapt into space. Their small forms darted across the station's hull, nimble fingers working to disable weapon systems and security protocols. With a shudder, the shuttle docked. Patrick led the charge, flanked by his human operatives and the pack of dogs. The station's corridors were a maze of alien technology, but the dogs' keen senses guided them true, sniffing out Bajoran presence and leading them away from ambushes. They fought their way through the station, a bizarre ballet of human and animal coordination. Ravens swooped through ventilation shafts, emerging with vital components clutched in their beaks. Monkeys swung from conduits, rewiring systems, and causing chaos in the Bajoran ranks. As they neared the control center, Patrick's comm unit crackled to life. Dr. Carter's voice came through, breathless with excitement. "Patrick, we've made a breakthrough with the Bajoran environmental data. There are Earth species that could potentially restore their home world. This could change everything." Patrick's mind raced with the implications as they breached the final defenses. The control center lay before them, a panoramic view of Earth visible through its massive windows. As Bajoran officers turned in shock, Patrick allowed himself a small smile. "I think," he said, raising his weapon, "it's time we had a talk about the future of both our worlds." Worlds. He paused, taking in the stunned expressions of the Bajoran officers. "And I believe we have much to discuss." The capture of the orbital command station marked a turning point in the war. As Patrick and his team returned to Earth, they were greeted as heroes. The Seattle skyline came into view, and Patrick felt a surge of pride. The city had become the heart of the resistance, and now it would serve as the nerve center for the final push against the Bajoran invaders. Gatti headquarters buzzed with activity as Patrick strode through the corridors, his animal companions at his side. Analysts pored over the data retrieved from the orbital station, while tacticians huddled around holographic displays of Bajoran strongholds. Dr. Emily Carter intercepted Patrick as he entered the main strategy room. "We've identified 5 major Bajoran fortresses," she said, pulling up a global map. "The Andes, Siberian tundra, Australian outback, Sahara Desert, and Southeast Asian jungle." Patrick nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. Each location presents unique challenges and opportunities. We'll need to tailor our approach for each fortress. Over the next days, Patrick immersed himself in planning. For the Andes operation, he consulted with veteran mountaineers and wildlife experts. "Llamas," he said, pointing to an image of the sure-footed animals. "They can carry our supplies through terrain that would exhaust humans." He turned to an ornithologist. "And condors for aerial reconnaissance. Their eyesight is unparalleled." In the Siberian war room, Patrick stood before a group of Arctic specialists. "Huskies for endurance, polar bears for raw power," he explained. "We'll use the cover of a blizzard to mask our approach." The Australian team presented a unique challenge. Patrick found himself in a sweltering outback camp, surrounded by Aboriginal trackers and a menagerie of marsupials. "Kangaroos for rapid transport," he said, watching as a soldier tentatively approached one of the powerful animals. "And for nighttime operations, we'll use koalas, possums, and wombats." A wildlife handler approached carrying a clear container. Inside, a deadly-looking spider flexed its legs. "Don't forget our venomous friends," the handler said with a grin. "They'll sow chaos in the Bajoran ranks." The Sahara mission took shape in a sun-baked tent. Tuareg nomads nodded approvingly as Patrick outlined his plan. "Camels for transport and water supply," he said, "Fennec foxes for their acute hearing, and peregrine falcons for high-speed aerial support." In the steamy jungles of Southeast Asia, Patrick watched as orangutans and gibbons swung effortlessly through the canopy. "Perfect for setting up ambush points," he murmured. A thunderous trumpeting drew his attention. A herd of elephants emerged from the foliage, their handlers guiding them with gentle commands. "And our battering rams," Patrick said, patting the nearest elephant's trunk. As the preparations reached their final stages, Patrick received an urgent message from Dr. Carter. He found her in her lab, surrounded by a cloud of pale yellow pollen. "Bioengineered allergen," she explained, her eyes bright with excitement. "Incapacitates Bajorans without permanent harm. We can produce it in large quantities." Patrick's comm unit buzzed. A technician's voice came through, tense with urgency. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission. It's from a group of Bajoran scientists." Minutes later, Patrick stared at the holographic image of a Bajoran, its alien features etched with worry. "We seek peace," the scientist said. "We offer information about the fortresses in exchange for safety and the chance to save our dying world." Patrick's mind raced. This could change everything. After a flurry of encrypted communications with world leaders, he made his decision. Agreed, he told the Bajoran scientist. We'll extract you immediately. The extraction was a masterpiece of interspecies cooperation. Navy SEALs rode on the backs of trained dolphins, slipping past Bajoran patrols to reach the defectors. The intelligence they provided allowed Patrick to refine his attack plans, potentially saving countless lives on both sides. As dawn broke on the day of the offensive, Patrick stood in the Gadi Command Center. Screens showed live feeds from each fortress location. He took a deep breath, then gave the order. Commence Operation Earth United. In the Andes, condors soared through the thin air, dropping disruptors onto shield generators. Llama-mounted commandos navigated treacherous mountain paths, their animal companions sure-footed where humans would falter. Siberian huskies led their human partners through blinding snow, their keen senses detecting hidden entrance points. Polar bears smashed through ice barriers, their roars echoing across the frozen landscape. The Australian outback erupted in a cloud of red dust as a massive kangaroo stampede charged towards the Bajoran fortress. In their wake, koalas and possums slipped through small openings, infiltrating the alien stronghold. Across the Sahara, peregrine falcons streaked through the sky, dropping miniaturized EMP devices onto Bajoran communication arrays. Fennec foxes, their large ears twitching, alerted human soldiers to approaching patrols. In Southeast Asia, elephants adorned with thick armor plating lumbered towards the jungle fortress. Their massive forms breached the walls as primates swung overhead, releasing clouds of Carter's bioengineered pollen. Patrick watched the feeds intently, his hands gripping the edge of the command console. Reports flooded in from each theater of operation: successes, setbacks, unexpected developments. He processed each piece of information, adapting strategies on the fly. As the battles raged across the globe, Patrick allowed himself a moment of reflection. The sight of humans and animals fighting side by side against an alien threat was something he never could have imagined. Yet here they were, Earth's diverse species united against a common enemy. A cheer erupted from the Australian sector analysts. The Outback Fortress had fallen, its Bajoran defenders incapacitated by a combination of venom and Carter's pollen. Patrick nodded in satisfaction, then turned his attention to the other ongoing assaults. The war wasn't over yet, but for the first time since the invasion began, he could see a path to victory. Victory! Alerts flashed across the command screens, drawing his attention back to the present. "Sir, we have breaches at all 5 fortresses," reported a technician, her voice tight with excitement. Patrick leaned forward, studying the holographic displays. In the Andes, condors soared through the thin air, their cargo of disruptors falling with pinpoint accuracy onto the shield generators. As the barriers flickered and died, llama-mounted commandos surged forward, their sure-footed mounts navigating treacherous mountain paths with ease. "Fortress perimeter breached," came the report from the Andes team leader, engaging heavy Bajoran resistance inside. Patrick watched as the team released a swarm of trained Andean hummingbirds. The tiny birds darted and weaved through the air, their incredible speed and agility confounding Bajoran targeting systems. In their wake, massive Andean bears lumbered forward, their powerful forms smashing through internal barriers. His attention shifted to the Siberian theater, where polar bears and huskies led the charge through icy defenses. The feed showed a husky pack, noses to the ground, racing through winding corridors. "Sir, the huskies have caught a scent." The Siberian commander's voice crackled over the comm. "Something big and dangerous." Patrick's eyes widened as the camera panned to reveal a massive device, its ominous hum audible even through the transmission. "That's a superweapon," he realized. "Designed to trigger avalanches, it could bury the entire region." He watched, heart in his throat, as the human operatives worked feverishly to disarm the device, guided by the Husky's keen senses. With seconds to spare, the weapon powered down, its threat neutralized. In the Australian outback, chaos reigned. The marsupial infiltration team had encountered unexpected resistance. The Bajorans had adapted their defenses to repel small animals. "Freeman, we need a new plan." The Australian commander's voice was tense. "These blokes have wised up to our furry friends." Patrick watched as the Aboriginal trackers huddled briefly, then sprang into action. A chorus of dingoes began to howl, drawing Bajoran attention. In that moment of distraction, a mob of emus, led by the trackers, charged the main gates. The feed showed a Bajoran officer, mandibles clicking in confusion, as the large flightless birds crashed through their defenses. In the ensuing chaos, Patrick caught glimpses of deadly spiders and snakes slipping through gaps, making their way towards key Bajoran leaders. The Sahara operation unfolded on another screen. Tuareg nomads on camels engaged in a high-speed chase across the dunes, pursued by heat-resistant Bajoran battle mechs. Just as it seemed the mechs would overtake them, the nomads led their pursuers into a narrow canyon. From hidden caves, a pride of Barbary lions, a species Patrick had thought extinct in the wild, erupted into action. Their powerful claws found weak points in the alien machinery, ripping through metal and circuitry. "Mech units neutralized," reported the Sahara team leader, proceeding to the central compound. The Southeast Asian assault drew Patrick's eye next. The elephant charge had successfully breached the outer walls, but now the team faced a new challenge. The fortress interior was a dense booby-trap jungle. He watched as primates took the lead, their agile forms swinging from vine to vine, safely guiding the human operatives through the hazards. Sun bears scaled the inner structures with incredible speed, making their way to the Bajoran command center. Across all theaters, reports flooded in of Bajoran troops succumbing to Dr. Carter's bioengineered pollen. The aliens dropped their weapons, overcome by the carefully tailored allergen. As the 5 fortresses teetered on the brink of falling, an urgent alert flashed on Patrick's primary screen. "Sir," a technician called out, "we're detecting massive energy buildup in the Marianas Trench. It matches the signature the Bajoran scientists warned us about." Patrick's mind raced. The doomsday device. He had hoped they wouldn't resort to this, but he had prepared for the possibility. "Initiate Operation Deep Strike," he ordered, his voice calm despite the stakes. On a new screen, footage from the deep-sea operation appeared. Human divers moved through the crushing darkness, flanked by enormous sperm whales. As they approached the underwater Bajoran base, giant squid surged forward, their tentacles wrapping around external defense turrets and crushing them with incredible force. The whales began emitting low-frequency sonic pulses, their haunting calls visibly disorienting the Bajoran personnel inside the base. As the undersea team breached the airlock, Patrick received confirmation that all 5 surface fortresses had fallen. He took a deep breath, then opened a channel to the underwater base. "Bajoran Supreme Commander," he began, his voice firm but not unkind. "Your fortresses have fallen. Your troops are incapacitated or captured. We have breached your final stronghold. Enough blood has been shed on both sides. I offer you one final chance to surrender." There was a long moment of silence. Patrick could almost feel the weight of the galaxy holding its breath. Then a raspy voice responded, We surrender." As the words echoed through the command center, a cheer erupted from the assembled staff. Patrick allowed himself a small smile, but he knew their work was just getting started. "Broadcast the surrender worldwide," he ordered, "and get me in touch with Dr. Carter. We have a peace to build." In the weeks that followed, Patrick found himself busier than ever. The captured Bajoran technology opened up new frontiers of scientific discovery. Dr. Carter's joint Human-Bajoran initiative to save the alien homeworld was making remarkable progress, utilizing Earth's biodiversity in ways no one had imagined. The Global Animal Defense Initiative was evolving, transitioning into an interplanetary diplomatic organization. As Patrick oversaw this transformation, he couldn't help but marvel at how far they had come. 1 month after the surrender, Patrick stood in a shuttle, approaching the former Bajoran command station in orbit. But now, instead of weapons and war rooms, the station housed a grand wildlife preserve, a symbol of the new era of peace. As the shuttle docked, Patrick felt a familiar presence at his side. He looked down, smiling at his loyal dog, the companion who had been with him since the invasion began. Together, they stepped into the transformed station. The sight that greeted them was breathtaking. Space-adapted dolphins swam through zero-gravity corridors, their sleek forms gliding effortlessly past viewing windows. In carefully maintained habitats, Earth animals mingled with Bajoran species, a living testament to the power of cooperation. Patrick walked to a large viewing window, his dog at his heel. As they gazed down at the blue-green sphere of Earth, he reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them here. From a simple animal shelter manager to the leader of Earth's defense and now a key figure in interplanetary peace. A group of space dolphins swam by, their clicks and whistles muffled by the station's hull. Patrick watched them, marveling at their adaptation to this alien environment. In their graceful movements, he saw a reflection of humanity's own journey, facing the unknown, adapting, and thriving. His dog let out a soft woof, drawing Patrick's attention. He knelt down, scratching behind the animal's ears. "That's right, boy," he said softly. "We did it. Together." As Patrick stood again, his gaze returned to Earth. The planet seemed smaller from up here, yet more precious than ever. The invasion had nearly torn their world apart, but in joining with the animals they shared it with, humanity had found its greatest strength. A comm panel nearby beeped, signaling an incoming transmission. The work of building a lasting peace was just the beginning. Patrick gave Earth one last look, then turned to face whatever new challenges awaited. With his loyal companion at his side and the united strength of Earth's species behind him, he was ready for whatever the universe might bring.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.